Hi, I'm Jenny Robertson, founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm really excited to share the speaker portion of our Connections Over Coffee gathering of the On Purpose Woman Global Community. Beth Knaus is speaking on It's Marketing, Not Memoir, Walking the Line Between Relatable Storytelling and Oversharing. Beth of That's a Spade Copywriting Services is an award-winning writer and messaging consultant, author, and speaker. She writes for female entrepreneurs who are confident in their unique expertise, but need help to recognize and refine their voice, get comfortable with their brand messaging, and feel confident in how they use it to write and speak about their businesses. Beth lives in Boston with her husband, cat Fifi, and has three amazing adult children. And you can find out more about Beth at that'saspade.com, and that link is also in the text of this video. And Beth, this is your topic that I think so many women entrepreneurs struggle with, and how much of their story to share. And since you always deliver when you speak to this community, I'm really excited to hear what you have for us today. So you're on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny, for having me again back to this wonderful community. Yeah, this is an interesting topic, and I'm very careful about how I talk about it. But, at the end of the day, the reason it's come up for me is that I've been in situations where I see people share something personal, and let's face it, if we're sharing something that's vulnerable for us, it's very easy to get sucked into it, into the vortex, into the nucleus of what it is, and to lose sight of why are we sharing that piece of information? Because we're looking to help our audience, right? It's different than if you're venting or confiding in a good friend. And I've been places where I see that happen, and then everyone around them, of course, is empathetic and feels badly and wants to offer support and all of those things. And then sometimes you have people who might support your business out of that feeling badly from that story they learned. And as business people, whether we like to say this or not, we want to build relationships. We don't want a one-off, like, oh, that Girl Scout cornered me, so I have to buy a box kind of feeling. We want to start a business relationship with people that is also authentic and relatable. And I think there is a better way of sharing personal things and sharing them strategically. Like I always call it strategic storytelling, because we want to be relatable and vulnerable and personal. And somebody just said something before we started this, and there's a facts and feelings thing, right? And so we have, and this is something I learned from my dad years ago. I was raised by my dad, and I thank him for my ability for direct communication, is that, we can have our feelings about stuff, but then we still have to address the facts. And oftentimes, I actually wrote myself a note here that came to me this morning before I was speaking, that memoir, if anybody writes personally, like I write personally, I started out as a personal writer before I wrote professionally, and I am in the middle of a memoir. And what I write in my memoir is about what I endured. You want people in a memoir to know what that experience felt like. But when you're marketing a story, you want people to know how you endured and what you walked away with that now helps you and the people you help. So there's kind of like this nuance and fine line, right, between that. And I'd like to tell you this is an easy thing where I can give you 3 steps to do it. It takes time and it takes practice, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what that looks like today. So one of the things in my notes is, what's this thing with storytelling, right? Because there's definitely an upkick with this in marketing and what you're supposed to be doing. Well, of course, we have AI and we have ChatGPT that is affecting writing and photographs and voice and all kinds of other things. We have, I don't know about you, but I have people creeping into my DMs that the second you're connected with them, they're going right for the sale. They don't know anything about you. There's all kinds of scams and phishing in your texts and your emails and hacking of social media accounts. There's all this subconscious kind of trust crisis going on. And on top of that, we are spending more and more time that is not face to face in person, right? Look at how much of our lives have become online, and yet we don't necessarily trust online. And so showing up as the real you is the way to prove your trust when people are looking to work with you. Um, and there is this push and pull of showing up, right? Like, how do I show up professionally? What are the other people in my field doing? How are they showing up? Is that how I have to show up? You know, if I show up personally, am I respecting boundaries? Am I, reaching the right people? And something else I see is that uh, people aren't sure how to really spotlight themselves and who they are and how they do the work that they do. And so we speak out to everyone like with a megaphone, hoping to grab people instead of speaking through our stories to who we are really as humans and letting the people who relate to that come to us. And there's a difference there. We spend a lot of time trying to pull people in and say, I hope that's my person. But when you can tell the right relatable stories and get your best client to see who you are, they're going to come to you. It's a little bit of a shift in how it happens. Um, we've gotten away from direct human communication. So I'm using my notes I created for you also. And, we can all think we know someone online. We might even like them, but trust is a different element. And trust in a very, shallow business sense is when people decide if they're going to work with you, if they're going to open their wallet. And at the end of the day, that's what we're hoping for, right? That we can take all this goodness and talent and things that we have and help somebody. So, one of the things I want to say, because somebody else made me think about this. Actually, it was Ashira, because Ashira, you were talking about the traditional corporate experience and, wondering how to share how it was to work in corporate, to not fit in, anxiety and stress. And I hope that was okay that I just repeated those things. Um, and just, boundaried sharing and where is the line for you and where is the line for the person who's listening. And that's where, trust comes in and people get to know you because we're technically serving our younger selves today, right? We have learned something, we have gotten through something, we have developed a skill, and we see, even if it's not exactly the same thing that you wish you had gotten when you were struggling, but now we figured out how to help somebody else with their struggle, right? And that struggle isn't always negative. Sometimes it's, oh my gosh, I've had all this success faster than I've known, and I've had achievements. How do I go? Where do I go from here? Right? It's not always someone is in pain or, limited. Sometimes it's, oh, I'm not limited, but I don't know how to take that forward, which is another good thing to know. Because let's talk about bragging for a second. I'm a big component for, getting past this because we are taught, specifically as women, hands in your lap, wait to be spoken to. Don't, talk like you're better than someone else, things that Ginny mentioned. But at the end of the day, if you work for yourself, you have to promote yourself. You have to get out there and say, this is what I know, and this is what I know how to do, and this is how only I do it if you want to build your business. And it's not bragging, right? You're promoting yourself so that you can find people that you can do good work with. It's very different than, bragging is like, oh, I have a big house and I drive a fancier car than you and I weigh 10 pounds less. And, bragging is nitpicky, shallow stuff like that, that you throw out there probably because if anyone's doing it, they're insecure, right? And there's something that they need to compensate for. But promoting yourself is like, hey, I can share this. It's about sharing. And so I know all women struggle with it. I'm sure there are plenty of men that struggle with it. I'm not, trashing the men, but I think it's definitely more of a female thing in how we've been raised. So I want you to think about when you move forward from today, at what point of comfortability are you willing to consider working with somebody? How much social stalking and research do you do, right? We want to make sure that they really exist where they say they do, that all those places say the same thing. And at what point, what makes you relax and take your guard down with somebody? And it's a great awareness to have as you're going through that. Want to make sure I'm watching my time. Uh, and it's mainly when someone has opened up to you in some sort of an honest way, right? Maybe you've downloaded their freebie and you decide to have a one-to-one call that really seals it for you, or they've said enough things, or somebody has said something in a testimonial that or somebody's referred them. Like, we want a couple of pieces of proof, right? And this is why strategic storytelling is so great, our personal journeys and our experiences. But as I said earlier, it's hard when you're in the center of it, right? Even if it's something that happened 20 years ago. When we go to share that story in our minds, it's really good to do some breathing, get your tea, light a candle, and step outside like you're looking in and say, what is it that happened here? What did I learn? My skill, my talent, my perspective, my philosophy. What piece of it came from having this experience? So it's not necessarily that you want to share the experience. And, you don't have to say, when I was younger, my, father yelled at me. And I think it was Mary who said, we're worried about having people, TMI and calling people out. You can say, I had an experience with someone close to me who yelled at me. My reaction was always this, it made me quiet. It made me shrink. It made me do these things. And then I learned how to X, Y, and Z. And I can help you do those things. So, we're not talking about the fright at the time or what it was like in the room when that person was yelling and your emotions got the best of you. There's just kind of a fine line of what pieces of it are going to help. Believe me, anybody who's coming to you, they're coming to you because they're having their own experience, and they have their own emotions going on. They know. So by leaving those pieces out, you're not misleading them, or they're not going to lose you in the story. They get it. So that's one key thing I think you want to think about. I told you there's no clear steps. We talked about the fine line. So I like to talk about the toolbox. When you can go through these stories, you pull out your own tools, right? Any of these things you've walked away with, like I talked about, the skills, the experience, etc. Each one is a tool. We all have a toolbox, and our toolboxes look similar. It's what's inside that makes us different and really makes us unique. And by using our combination of tools is what helps how we work with people, our process, really stand out. And that's really where people can see you for who you are and why they would hire you, right? If everybody just walks around with a toolbox, right? Let's say all the coaches walk around with a toolbox. How does anybody know which coach to pick? They don't know. And then the thing we don't want is they choose by price, or they choose by your pretty clothes, or you know what I mean? They choose by something else, but they need to know who you are to know that you're actually going to have this best connection with them. So, one of the things I came up with was, are you sharing trauma and triumph, or triumph, right? There's a big term that all the cool kids are using these days about trauma dumping. And I think that's a little heavy for what we're talking about, but it is part of what I was saying before, right? How much of your actual angst and emotion are you sharing? Do you need to share it? Maybe you do. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but you have to decide, what purpose will it serve? What will it do for your audience who's hearing that bit of it? Because why are they there, right? They're not there to commiserate with you. They're there to figure out how you can help them get through this thing that you already got through. And why are you sharing your story? people like to see there's proof that things can improve. Um, it also establishes your expertise. It shows, you know what? Yeah, I had that struggle, but I have the strength now, and I have the expertise to guide somebody else through this. And that's what people really need to see, like, oh, thank God, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I see you look successful to me. Not everybody looks successful to me, but you might if you tell me that relatable piece. Now, when we talk about, where do these come from? I was actually in a webinar the other day, and this woman was talking about having a story bank and tying those stories to your values. And I think this is so cool. Um, and this is probably the last thing I'll touch on because I want us to be able to have conversation afterwards. But, you know, uh, I think the first time we do a values exercise, if you've done it, and I'm happy to share a value sheet with you if you haven't done it, it's really great exercise to do and to do it periodically in case things change. But, it's a sheet of like 100 words. Creativity, positivity, integrity, discipline, like all kinds of descriptive words. And you go through and pick a bunch and you keep weaning them down and weaning them down until you have like 3 to 5 words is the ideal, usually, the standard. But of course, you can have as many as you want. And then when you have those values, sometimes it's, oh, I love these words. But for me, values are about on my most challenging day, am I leaning into these values, right? If I say my value is integrity, yeah, on my best day, integrity is easy, right? But on my worst day, do I look at integrity and say, this is where I live, this is where I'm grounded? So I think that people don't necessarily look at values that way. Most of our values come from stories, right? So I'll tell you quickly, honesty is one of my values. And when I was, I don't know, 14 or 15, one of my first jobs was in this little boutique in the town I lived in. It was a clothing store, and I was working there part-time. And the couple who had opened it were, I'm going to guess, Russian people who had come to the country. I don't remember that exactly. I just remember how they sounded when they spoke. And of course, it's a long time ago. And I loved working there. I loved the store. I couldn't wait to get paid because maybe I could buy a shirt or whatever. I really enjoyed it. And um, the gentleman owner, it was a couple, came to me one day out of the blue and said to me, we're going to fire you. And we're firing you because you stole something and you can't work here. I was devastated because I knew I didn't steal anything, and I felt horrible because I love this store and I love this job, and that was just it. Now I can look back and see the store was struggling. They weren't doing well. These were people who came to this country to establish a life, and I'm sure it was frustrating and embarrassing, and it was a pride issue for this man. Does that make it okay? It doesn't, but it also lets me be patient and empathetic with the situation. And I just wish he would have been honest with me. It would have been so much nicer, right? I would have felt so much better. And it affected me that he couldn't be honest. And so honesty is one of my values. And that's a story. And I've told it and I've shared it, a number of times. And that, something about me now. And, I don't have to go into saying he was a jerk or he did this or he blah, blah, blah. And I don't have to say I cried, I was embarrassed. I can just tell you what I walked away with from that experience. So, what can you do to get here? It takes time, right? Get your values, find some stories that go to them. You can use some prompts, some writing prompts, journaling, time for introspection and reflection. We do not introspect again, I think as women, because we're looking out here. Oh, those people say I'm this, so I must be this. These people say I'm patient or energetic or resilient, so I must be. Go in here and find out who you are to you in your eyes and what are you bringing to the table for people through your stories. So, um, that's pretty much all I have to share today. I know it was a lot, but
Beth, thank you so much. And I'd like to ask the women here with us on Zoom today to please unmute yourself so we can applaud and shout her name and thank Beth for this amazing information. So Beth, thank you.
Thank you,
Unmute
Beth.
y'all. Come on. Let's
Yay! Yay! Thank you. Woo, woo,
yes,
woo.
thank you.
appreciate it.
And I'm so glad you're giving us those notes. That link is in the text. So ladies, be sure you check that out. And I want to thank anyone who's watching this live or the replay, either on Facebook or on our YouTube channel. If you want to join us for one of our Zoom gatherings, please go to my website, opwgc.com. That stands for On Purpose Woman Global Community, and check out the gatherings that we have and also the magazine. Thanks again for watching.